Welcome back to Techline Africa. Every app you've ever used makes decisions. Netflix will decide what to recommend. Your bank will decide whether to approve a transaction or not. TaskFlow will also decide whether to accept or reject a task you are trying to add. In this episode, we will learn how to make these decisions in JavaScript and use it in our project. Concept first, then we build. Let's go. Before we talk about if statement, we need to understand what they are checking. A Boolean is the simplest data type in JavaScript, and it has only two values, either true or false. Every condition that we write in an if statement, no matter how complex, will eventually resolve to either true or false. For example, I can just do a simple comparison. If 5 is greater than 3, or if 5 is less than 3. Save your work and refresh the page. And we get true and false. The very first one is giving us true and the second one is giving us false. All the time, we compare what's on the left to what's on the right. We get one of these two values. And that is what the if statement is about. We write conditions and they will evaluate to either true or false, no matter how complex they are. An if statement will execute a block of code as long as a condition is true. For example, we can have an if statement to check if 5 is greater than 3. And if that is the case, then we log to the console, yes. This is what we are doing. We are telling JavaScript that evaluate this expression, and if the result is true, then execute this block. Mind you, the block of code always starts from the curly bracket to the ending curly bracket. So the only time that we execute this block is when this condition becomes true. Save your work and refresh the page. And now you see yes in the console. Now what happens if this condition becomes false? So assuming we are comparing 5 to 5. So we save it, you refresh your page, and now you don't get anything in the console. That is because the default behavior of the if statement is always to execute this block as long as this condition is true. But in a case where the condition becomes false, nothing will happen. And that is where the else block will come in. So we add another block, else. Then we log to the console, no. And this is what we are doing. Compare these two values. If the result is true, then execute this block. But if that is not the case, then execute this block. So now you save your work, you refresh your page, and you should get no. Currently, our if statement is working fine. It checks the condition, and if it is true, it will execute this block. And if it is not true, then it will execute the else block. But in a case where we want to check multiple conditions, this if statement will fail. We can fix that by adding another block, else if. So first of all, let's move this condition into a variable. We can declare a variable, const a, and assign a value of 5. And then now we can compare the value of a to 5 and add additional block, else if a is greater than 3. Then we can log to the console, yes, greater than 3. This is what we are doing. We have a variable a and we have assigned a value 5. And on line 47, we are comparing if the value of a is greater than 5. Again, if this condition becomes true, then this block will be executed. But if this condition is not true, skip this block and come and compare or check this condition. So if a is greater than 3, then log to the console, yes, greater than 3. If this condition fails and the second one also fails, then go ahead and log to the console no. So you save your work. And then when you refresh your page, we get yes greater than 3. We can also combine multiple conditions in the same block by using Boolean operators. There are 3 types of Boolean operators: the AND operator, the OR operator, and the NOT operator. So, for example, I can add another condition on line 51 by using the AND operator. And this is what we are doing. We have 2 conditions in the same block. First of all, check if the value of A is greater than 5. And go ahead and check if the value of A is greater than 3. What we are telling JavaScript is that before you display yes to the console, make sure that this condition is true and this condition is also true. And that is how the AND operator is working. Anytime that we use the AND operator, the only time that this condition will become true is when the very first condition is true and the second condition is true. So even though the value of A is greater than 3, but in the very first condition, the value of A is not greater than 5. So this entire condition becomes false. So if you save your work and you refresh the page, you still get the same output because this condition is false. So we skip this line or this block and then come and do another check here. Now, if I go ahead and change this operator to the OR operator, I'll save the work and refresh the page. Now I am getting yes. That is because the OR operator is only expecting one of these conditions to be true. So even though A is not greater than 5, but A is greater than 3, and with the OR operator, as long as one condition is true, the entire statement becomes true. And that is a clear difference between the AND operator and the OR operator. With the AND operator, both conditions are expected to be true before the entire statement becomes true. But with the OR operator, as long as one condition is true, the entire statement becomes true. The NOT operator will negate a condition or a value. For example, this condition here is trying to compare if the value of A is greater than 3. Now, if I wrap this in a parenthesis and then bring this NOT operator, I'm trying to say that only display this line if the value of A is not greater than 3. So without this operator, I'm saying display this line if the value of A is greater than 3. But if I bring this operator, I am negating this condition to say that only display this line of code if the value of A is not greater than 3. Now that we've seen how to implement if statement in JavaScript, let's go ahead and add it to our project by adding some validations. Currently, our project will allow us to add a task even if we don't enter a title. If you click on add, automatically we get an increment, and this is not very good. So we can fix that by using what we just learned. Let's create a function, validateInput, which will accept a parameter, title. And then we can add an if statement. This is what we are doing. We have 2 conditions in this statement. The first part of the condition is making sure that the title is available. The second part of the condition, we first of all remove the leading and trailing white spaces by using the trim function in JavaScript. And then we compare it. If it is equal to a blank space, then we return this string. Remember, we said that with the OR operator, it is only expecting one of these conditions to be true, and then the entire statement will be true. The second part of the validation, we will compare if what you provided is less than 3 characters. Then we can tell the user title must be at least 3 characters. What if you are trying to add a task that is already added? We can check that. And then we are going to return an error message. A task with this title already exists. And if all of these conditions are not true, then we are going to return null. We have created our function that is going to validate the input. We need to go ahead and invoke this function. Let's go to our add task function. And before we add a task, we are going to do this validation. So we create a variable, error, and we assign it to the validateInput function and provide the argument title. In the previous video, we created this div container with a class of error message and an ID of error message. We are going to reference it and use it in our JavaScript. So after the priority, we create an error element. And then we use the document.getElementById function. So what we do next is, if there is any error, then we go ahead and update the error element with the error that we received. And then the title input, we are going to give it a style with border color of our variable. Remember, we've already created this variable in the previous video. And then we use the return keyword to end this block of code. Now, if there are no errors, then we go ahead and set the error element test content to blank space. And the title input, we also remove the border color. Take note and fix this typo. Accent 2, not accent -2. Save your work. Now refresh your page, and when you try to add a task with an empty title, you get this error message. Task title cannot be empty. If you go ahead and add a task with only 2 characters, then we get another error. Title must be at least 3 characters. And if you do the right thing, then the error goes away and the task is added. One thing that we can also add is to clear the title input after we have saved the task. So after line 35, reference the title input, and then we set the value to a blank space. Now when you refresh your page and you type your title, you click on add, and now we get an increment and the input is cleared. This is what we've done so far. We learned the concept of if statement and applied it in our project by using it for validations. In the next video, we are going to learn the concept of arrays and objects and apply it in our project. See you in the next video.